Another Top Advisor Marketing podcast. Of course, we are live. We are at the Elite Wealth Advisors Symposium here in Fort Lauderdale. Now, real quick before Aric and I jump into what we're going to talk about today, this is a really interesting conference. One of the neat things is they only limited to 100 people. But the other thing that's really powerful is that you can actually bring the implementer here, because many of you know that advisors go to conferences and they come back and then all of a sudden it's a nightmare because, well, the advisor's like, I've got all of these great ideas, and then there's nobody there to implement it. But anyway, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our friends here at EWAS. It's an absolutely great program. But Aric and I are going to jump into something that we think, well, we haven't really talked about, which is what do advisors do wrong when they're podcasting, and then how do we as ProudMouth help fix that? Now, just as a precursor here, for those of you who don't know Aric Johnson, he's done over 1,600 episodes with financial services professionals. This is literally what he does all day long. So Aric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. This is great. This is fantastic. On the other side of the mic, this is a little weird.
I know. I'm interviewing you. Trust me, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
All right. What are some of the biggest things that you see advisors do or hear advisors do that you wish that they would be able to listen to this show and correct it on the front end?
Well, first thing is just because of being here, I don't know if the audience can hear it, but there's some ambiance, right, to this scenario. We're at a conference, which for our clients that have gone to conferences and recorded at conferences, that's great because you're at a conference. You want a live event, you want a live feel. The problem is when you hear this kind of stuff when they're just in their office, right? All this little background noise, and they're not taking a good time of day, or they don't have the office staff aware that, hey, I'm going to be recording, so we need to keep quiet for the next 30 to 45 minutes or whatever. And it's, again, that's an easy fix, right? Because that's just part of what we do in our coaching program to help them reduce as much of the ambient type noise as possible.
Well, the other thing is making sure they have the right microphone. And
Absolutely.
we actually buy all of our clients the right microphone, which will reduce the amount of ambient noise. So if you have one of these directional microphones and you talk away from the microphone, all of a sudden you notice my volume got really low. So that means it's going to take out a lot of the ambient noise. We can also take some of this out in post-production, can't we, Aric?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking to what you just said, if you are positioning yourself correctly in front of a microphone, which is 1.5 to 2 inches away, your head, not saying you have a big head, I have a big head, my head blocks a lot of the noise that could be behind me or even to the side. Now it got a lot louder in here just now. I can hear that. I don't know how much is coming through, but again, if you're positioned correctly, it's going to reduce a lot of that. And then in post-production, our editing team is fantastic. Isolating specific noises. Here's the thing. It's cold in a lot of part of the country right now. And I'm not going to ask an advisor to turn off their heater necessarily. So there may be a fan noise in the background where the heater's blowing. Our team can isolate that noise specifically and do a sound reduction, almost eliminating it in most cases. And again, then our advisors stay warm.
Yeah. We love that too, because we don't want their teeth chattering, which would be really annoying.
That's number 2. Teeth chattering is all it is.
Well, let's talk about some of the vocal or verbal things that you've experienced with advisors and how you help them overcome that.
Okay, so are we talking technical or are we talking just like body?
Body, mouth, go-to words, stuff like that.
Got it. Okay, well, you just brought up so many different things. Go-to words we'll talk about separately. Body, right? Making sure that you have something to drink, because there's nothing worse than getting in, 3 minutes into a podcast. It's just gross, right? It happens, but when you're sticking together, making sure you have water. I've got one right next to me that I'll be grabbing here in a moment, but the simple little things like that you don't think will come through a microphone will come through a microphone and get on a recording. And a lot of that we can't edit out super well because it's connected to all the words you're saying. So it's simply make sure you have some water. I'm going to reach for mine.
And with that, giving space. Space is one of the most important things that we have found works so well to make you come across way more professional and having a higher quality produced podcast. If you sneeze, cough, breathe, lip smack, anything, if you can just give us a little bit of space in between there, man, that makes a world of difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our editing team can get in there and slice it, right? Just cut it completely out, unless you're rambling and going on and on and on, right? And that's part of what we do as our company and the voice talents, Patrice, myself, we will say, hey, hang on just a second, let's redo that, because we need to give some space for that editing team to do their job, which they do well.
Yeah. Now, you also said the rambling. We have a saying here that if you feel like you've been talking too long, you probably have been. What do you do to help advisors so that they have the confidence to stop talking instead of doing what people do when they're nervous, which is ramble, ramble, ramble?
I butt in. A lot of times I butt in, but it's just through a process of coaching and training. Here's the thing. Advisors have a message. They want to get that message out. And they're used to being able to talk and complete a thought, but they could be talking for 5 to 10 minutes with somebody in their office. You can't do that on a podcast. We need bite-sized pieces, little things. And so having that back and forth conversation with another person, you might not necessarily have that with a client because they don't know what questions to ask or they don't know where you're going with your train of thought. That's where we come in, because we do. And so we may jump in and say, well, hang on, just say, let me ask you about this. Ask them to elaborate a little bit, ask them to define what that acronym maybe means, because the audience doesn't know. It gives those spaces. And again, as the podcasting goes on, our advisors understand that, okay, this is what I need to be doing. They will recognize it for themselves.
Yeah, they internalize it. I mean, this is, as Aric is using the word coaching, that's really, really important. And one of the huge gaps that we found early on in ProudMouth was that people weren't teaching people how to be good behind the microphone. The other thing too is, so Aric, I don't know if you do this, but a lot of the stuff that we do, we record using video, right? And so if I actually will say to my very few clients that I'm working with, or when we're doing this podcast or other podcasts, I'll say, watch me. If I am nodding and then I use your name, that means I'm trying to get a word in. Or even I'll do the cut it off, or I'll do like this. I'll do hand signals too. I don't think I've ever had to do that, because if you see me nodding and I use your name, you've been talking too long. Woo-hoo-hoo, they're like, oh yeah, dude, I just messed up. Matt needs to jump in. Now, I love one of your early stories about one of our clients who's been with us for over 100 episodes now. And he had a relationship with a writing instrument that was rather annoying. Do you like to share with everybody what that story is?
Yeah. So here's the thing. When you do this as much as we do, you can hear things and you can identify what that is, right? I can completely tell if there's something that's in your glass with ice. I know that. I can also tell you whether that's carbonated or not. Sounds weird. I'm not in your office, but I can hear that. That's what our ears are for. And there was a very distinct sound during the podcast. This gentleman was interviewing somebody else, asked him a question. His guest is answering it. And during that time, I'm hearing a very slight clicking noise. And I had my chat open. So by any chance, you have a clicky pen? Right? I'm typing it in there, sending him the message so it's not on the air. I didn't have to stop anything. But then I heard a thunk, just a small thunk, but then the clicking stopped. And after the podcast was done, I was like, it was a clicky pen, wasn't it? It totally was. I said, what was that noise? He goes, I threw it across the room. He totally just chucked it to get it out of his hand, because we all have those little things, right? I talk with my hands. You can probably see that on video. We have to try to get our advisors to make sure they have the proper setup, because a lot of them will try to use a desktop microphone and you're banging, and we can't even do it here because we're on arms. I'm banging the table right now. You can barely hear it. However, the arm, it's this guitar thing going on, right? So if I'm too animated, I can absolutely bonk into the microphone, and that's really difficult to take out of a podcast if I'm talking over it.
I love their excitement, and I will always say, I love that you're so excited about what you're talking about. Please stop hitting the table. All right. Go-to words is another concern that a lot of people don't realize that they have these go-to words. And I tell the same story over and over, that I was interviewing a lady and she said, and whatnot 70 times in a 30-minute podcast. What do you do to help people sound more confident and professional? Because when you use go-to words, you don't come across as being as strong and smart and confident.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said a moment ago. It's space, right? Taking that time. And it's just breaking a habit. So once we recognize that we have a habit, I can top your 70 number. I had a client that said 180 times in a 22-minute podcast. And when I gave him that, and that was just the one transition word. There were others that he was using also. And when you draw it to somebody's attention, like, no way, oh way, right? Because we also provide a transcript to our clients as part of the to our clients as part of the compliance process. And they can see those things in there before they're edited out. So we help them to edit those out at the beginning and then shape the behavior from there. So looking at what your go-to word, my go-to word is so. I say it a lot. And my first strategy was, I told my wife, look, I need to break this habit. If you hear me say that, punch me in the shoulder. She loved that. She was way too excited about that. She started doing it with words that weren't so. But anyway, that's another story. But it's one of those things when you start to recognize it, then we put in little plans here and there. And I tell them, look, put it on a sticky note, put it by your phone. Don't put it by your monitor. Because it's not that you do it only when you're podcasting. You're doing it on the phone. You're doing it. And it's interesting because a lot of my clients have come back and said, I am such a better public speaker because I've been able to get rid of these things, little things here and there. And the hesitation and those transition words, it just doesn't make you sound like the authority you are. And so when they can stop and pause and then continue their thought without that, it's huge.
The idea of space, I want to spend a little bit of time on this because silence makes people uncomfortable, Aric. What do we do to help people get okay with that so that they can use silence to their advantage in a show?
We use it to the extreme sometimes. When we're working with them, I will purposefully, especially when it's just them and I at the beginning of their podcasting career, there will be times when I will pause for a much longer time than they think anybody should pause to help them understand it's not a big deal, because when we edit, we can edit gaps, right? We can shore that up a little bit if we need to, but we just practice it, right? It gives them the ability, and plus we release them to be able to do that by saying, look, all this can be edited. If you need to take time to control your thought, and I have somebody that is fantastic at this, Esther. She is so thoughtful in her conversations. She takes naturally long pauses anyway, but when she's really trying to form her next thought or where she wants to go, she will pause 4-5 seconds and then really come with something hard hitting, which makes her sound amazing. But because she took that time, she had what she wanted to say perfectly written in her head and then verbalized. And she knows, we'll just shore that up a little bit.
In post-production is your friend, right? And that's one of the things that a lot of the people who have launched their own podcast who don't actually have professional editors on the back end, they're putting these podcasts out because they've heard it's okay for it to be raw. Well, we want it to be raw. We want it to be real, not raw, but not terrible, right? We want to make sure that those people sound great. All right. If you could give all of the listeners today one piece of advice on what they could do to increase their confidence and actually start podcasting, what would it be?
Realize you're the expert. You already talk about these things on a daily basis as part of your job. If you're doing your job with passion, if you love what you do, you naturally speak about it very naturally, very calmly. You just bring the information to the client. If they have a question, you dive into it. You answer the question. You help them out. You provide them resources. There is no difference. There's absolutely no difference in podcasting. You are bringing the same information that you deal with on a daily basis. So have that confidence to know that you're already the professional. You're already the expert. All you have to do is just have a conversation with another person. And I don't bite.
Right. In the conversation, so that's what I want to end today on, is you don't have to talk for 27 minutes. If it's done correctly, you are going to have a conversation with a person who has agreed upon questions to navigate you through 27 minutes. All right, Aric, thanks so much for your brain today.
Absolutely.
We're about to go on break. This is going to get really loud here.
Yep.
So, hey, if you have not subscribed, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon.